We are back with another weekly live. There we go. Coming live from Doola HQ, and we come live every week on Wednesday. So today's topic, glasses on, is global expansion, how to scale your business internationally. Now, the very first thing, though, which I'd like to cover is the live chat. So here we go. We love the live chat. If people ask questions, we always prioritize the live chat, and we will pop the question on the screen. You can ask any question here. We'll cover it. Now, we do have a topic that we were going to cover. We always have a topic based on most common questions that came in. And today's topic is global expansion, scaling your business internationally. We've worked with over 15,000 founders from over 175 countries. So we've learned a lot from helping people scale internationally. However, if you have questions about anything else, you can drop it in the chat, whatever platform you're coming from, and we'll cover it. So comment here from Mahadevan. Love this. Founders need real guidance without the gatekeeping. I help CEOs scale through fractional HR, so I'm excited to tune in and join the conversation. Very cool, Mahedi. I'd love to hear. Where are you based? Where is your business based? Is it a U.S. business? Is it a non-U.S. business? And I'd love to hear what's the biggest challenge you're facing in your business now, or if you're feeling ambitious, you can share what your goal is for 2026. Thanks for tuning in, though. Okay, so let's come back again. Drop any questions in the chat. We'll cover them as we go. We're going to start with today's topic, which is global expansion. Now, let me actually just start by saying, because I want to be a myth, I need to be a myth buster here. You can indeed a U.S. business from outside the U.S., an LLC or C Corp. You can indeed get a U.S. business bank account without setting foot in the U.S., and you can, depending on the tax treaty status, pay zero taxes in the US, meaning it's an informational taxing, but you pay taxes in your home country. The key thing to keep in mind here is whether or not you have what's called effectively connected income. So if there's questions on taxes, we're happy to do a deep dive on that in a separate session. But I just wanted to myth bust this first, because a lot of people, when they hear global expansion, they might think, I have to move to the US or get a visa to start a business here. Not true. So it's myth bust. That's the very first thing. Now, a couple things I'll run through. Very first thing is, when is the right time to expand? Now, I would say and argue that in this day and age, given the internet, given social media, you can actually sell to anyone from anywhere. And there's a strong case to make you should be default global from day one. However, you have to focus as a business. Selling in a certain country is different than selling in a different country. That might have just sounded completely obvious, but what I mean by that is there's different buying habits, different patterns. For example, certain countries might prefer to pay with a certain processor versus another. People in a certain country might prefer a certain brand or look towards a certain influencer versus in a different country, it's completely different. They don't follow influencers, they follow print magazines. There are differences in geos, which means before you decide to expand, let's assume you've nailed a niche or found product market fit in a specific country, you have to validate that market. My favorite analogy for this is fire bullets, then fire the cannonball. And the analogy for this is, let's say you're a ship at battle, and there's another ship that's in the distance. You could gear up the cannonballs, which are expensive and big, and try to fire it. But if you do that first and you miss, you've spent all that cost and energy, and you've lost a cannonball. Versus if you start with the gun and fire a gun, and you first one misses, but it's okay, it's a bullet. You have 12 more. Then you fire another one, and it nicks the wood on the ship. Boom, you've got the direction sighted. You got everything in point. Then you can now fire the cannonball after. I think the same thing applies to business, where you fired bullets in your home country. It's worked. You've then fired the cannonball. You found product market fit. Before you hire 6 people to expand to the different geo and set up a full business, you should validate first. That could be as simple as firing a bullet, running some paid ads there, or just doing market research, even just literally researching the market to start. So that's my favorite analogy. Is fire bullets, then fire the cannonball. Validate the market. Start small. Test the pricing, test the messaging. It could even just be a landing page with some paid ads there, but try to de-risk, try to test first. You can use tools like Google Trends, strongly recommend surveys, but ultimately I think paying customers is best. So even if you had a pre-sale where you have the landing page saying, purchase, cool, it will be delivered by this date, you can at least validate that someone's willing to pay from that region. Comment here from Sujay XA Radia. Hey Arjun, I'm from India and want to take my startup globally. Where to start? What does the process look like? You tuned in for the perfect live. Okay, let's go through this in 60 seconds. 1, you can't start a business from India. Number two, where to start, it depends on if you're raising venture capital or not. If you're raising venture capital, Delaware C Corp, that's required by US investors. If you're not, you can go with an LLC, liability protection, and it'll give you the same benefits in terms of access to an EIN and business bank account. If you're not sure, start with the LLC. You can always convert to a C Corp or dissolve your LLC and start for a C Corp. You then need to get a business bank account. You can do that through one of our partners or through a company like Mercury. After that, you can set up your payment processor. You could use Stripe, you could use PayPal, you could use Payoneer, you could use other payment platforms. From there, you have to keep your business compliant. So that means bookkeeping, so you know your numbers. And then you'll have a federal tax obligation each year in the US. If you're a single member non-US LLC, that's Form 5472 with a Pro Form 1120. And there will be a state tax filing obligation. If you formed in Wyoming, that's your Wyoming annual report. That was a mouthful. If anyone has questions, or Sujay, if you do, you can scan this code right here. Just head to doola.com and schedule a demo. We can walk through that full process. But that's the full process. You might be wondering about timing. LLC typically takes a few days depending on the state, usually 1 business week. EIN can take 4 to 8 weeks. That's because you have to fax a form to the IRS. If you don't have a social, bank account can typically take 1 week. So if you're looking to start or get your bank account today or get revenue ready today, the best time to start was actually 8 weeks ago. So time is of the essence. If you're gearing up for Black Friday or the New Year, now is probably the best time to start there. Great question, though. From Jalfonzi. Hi, Arjun. Doola helps overseas businesses set up in the U.S. How did you find businesses who needed a U.S. entity before they knew they needed a U.S. entity? That's a great question. How do you find businesses who needed a U.S. entity before they knew they needed a U.S. entity? I have to use an analogy here. Did people know? I think this is wild. This is one of my favorite examples of next time someone says, oh, but everything's been invented, you can tell them this story. Did you know that we actually sent people to the moon before we put wheels on a suitcase? People used to just carry their bags until someone was like, wait a second, we should put wheels on it, and boom, the suitcase was invented. And the reason I share that story is, for how long did people just carry their bags without questioning or saying, oh, I need a suitcase? They didn't know what a suitcase was until someone came around, put wheels on it, and questioned the way the world operated. So in this case here, a lot of people, and this is actually why I started with this, a lot of people just assume, oh, I live outside the US, so I need to live in the US to get a business, because maybe in their country, that's what you have to do. You have to walk into a physical branch. But that's not true. So I think the biggest thing that we found is that it starts with education and actually saying, hey, you do not need to physically fly to the US. You can do parts of this process remotely. And I think that's the biggest way to answer the question here, is leading with education. Because if you educate people, then they open up their mind to it. This is possible. And then you start to go down the rabbit hole. Okay, it's possible, but what about for my country? What about for my type of business? What about my goal? Should I do this type of entity? What about, okay, I have this payment processor in this country. Does it integrate? You can get more technical in terms of exactly the how, but starting with the what and the why. And I think the biggest why is selling to US customers, credibility. You're now viewed as a US business versus an offshore company or a foreign country company, which is nothing wrong with that. But if you're selling to US customers, people want to see a US company. And then there's the internal, I would say, growth you can see from just going from being a freelancer to actually being a business. And all you did was form an entity. It just makes you take things more seriously. And I think that's honestly maybe even more powerful than anything else. It gives you the desire to actually push there. So I hope that answers the question, Jalfonzi. But ultimately, I think you have to first educate people of the pain, make them aware of the pain, or aware of, hey, you can actually do this. Once you've done that, boom, we have a solution for it. Versus saying, oh, did you know, we can form the company this quickly and we have these features. The person listening will be like, yeah, but how does that help me? Versus saying, wait, do you have this problem, or do you want this? Do you want to sell to US customers? Do you want to save time? Do you want to save money? Do you want to make money, etc.? Then we have a comment here from CJ. Thank you. Of course, fantastic question. Again, the question here was, how do you start from India? One, yes, you can start from India. And the process, again, 4 to 8 weeks, depending on if there's IRS delays or not, but absolutely is doable. Fantastic questions. Keep them coming. Now, you actually brought up in the question here inherently, the next thing when it goes to scaling globally is you have to keep your business compliant. Now, a couple things to keep in mind here. Compliance absolutely matters in both countries. So you can't just solve one side of the coin, meaning compliance in your country. You need to do that in the US. This is why we exist. But what we always advise is you have to talk to a tax professional in your country too and understand, hey, in my country, am I satisfying the business regulations and laws? Now, we do get asked a lot, hey, is doula coming to Canada or to India? We work with founders from those countries, but we do not do entity formation in those countries. We have our hands full with the US. Now, never say never, but at least for now, we have our hands full in the US. So ensure, actionable tip here, always make sure you've talked to a local tax professional. Okay, another key foundational piece of advice is separate personal from business. This is something you have to do from day one. Better late than never, too. If you're listening to this and you have not set up a business bank account, do that. Better late than never. If you're doing bookkeeping in a spreadsheet, get some free bookkeeping software. Separate personal from business. It'll save you lots of money and time when it comes to tax season if you have these things separated. Okay, in terms of expanding and going international, tactical piece of advice here is not just translating your content, but localizing it. So what that means is copy, payment methods, imagery, influencers, brand ambassadors. If you do all of those things, you're not just then speaking the language literally, you're doing it emotionally too. And I think it can be very easy to say, take the landing page, and we've actually learned this the hard way. We took blog content, we used this plugin just to translate the content and put it out there, and then wondered, hey, why aren't people coming or buying in droves? Why didn't we just multiply our conversions by the number of international pages we published? And then if you really think about it, the buyer journey is not one step, and it's also not linear. So the person who's coming to read that blog, they might have seen us on YouTube. They might have scheduled a demo. We don't offer demos in that language. Our YouTube videos weren't translated. We may not even been on the social media platform. Maybe the customer in the US goes to Twitter. Maybe they're going to a different platform if they're in a different country. So you have to have an immersive multi-touch process. And if you just translate, which is kind of what we did and learned the hard way, that's not going to really work. So speak the audience's language literally and emotionally. International finances tip, I mentioned separating personal from business. Another tip here is I would recommend for each entity have a separate bank account. And for your entity internationally in the US, make sure all income streams are tracked. That way, if your US CPA needs to talk to your, I'll use India as an example, Indian CPA, you have all your streams and the CPAs and the teams can chat too. Okay, that was a crash course in what I would say are the biggest recommendations for scaling your business internationally. As a reminder, we put out content like this. Again, you can schedule a free demo here if you have any questions on this topic specifically. But ultimately, I think it's really exciting to expand because it means you've nailed something in a certain niche. And I'll say that analogy again. You fired the bullet. You then fired the cannonball in your local country, and now you're going to do that again. I think that's fun. Firing the bullets, then the cannonball. So that's just the thing I would say is before you start firing cannonballs and say, let's expand to 15 countries, fire bullets. But even fire bullets in one place. Do it one at a time and then sequence it versus firing all the cannonballs and saying, crap, we're out of cannonballs. Use the resources well, sequence it properly. Okay, I want to also give a shout out here. Thank you to Jalfonzi for chiming in with a question in the live chat today. I also want to give a shout out here to Sujay. Thank you for chiming in on the live chat. And I want to give a shout out too to Mahedi for jumping in on the live chat. We love the live chat again. We'll be back here every single week. If you have questions or comments in the meantime, schedule a demo here. You can reach me on social as well. And without further ado, we will LLC you next week.